Hey guys, we're ready to have a study session for Advocacy Committee. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Councilpersons Bear.
Here.
Dupre. Is not here. Ross.
Here.
Salcido.
Here.
Zor.
Here.
Tobin. Here. And Mayor Higgins.
Here. We are here to discuss Lincoln Park Development Coalition. And I want to say thank you for everything that you have done up till now. And I want to say the presentation that you've given us already is far and beyond what we normally get. And I want to thank you and how professional that is. And I'll turn it over to you guys to give this a demonstration of what you would like to do.
I think we will come up together. So we're here to talk about the Lincoln Park Social Development Coalition. I'll introduce myself. My name is Leah Dumichel. I was the Lincoln Park City Planner until between 2015 and 2021, and we have together our
Paula Miller, pastor of...
I'm going to ask you to step up to the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Sorry,
this
you're
is-
right.
People at home will be watching.
We're short.
I know.
Paula Miller, pastor of St. Michael and All Angels Episcopal Church. It's been my pleasure to work with these wonderful people.
Reverend Carrie Hildebrandt. I am the pastor at Lincoln Park Presbyrterian Church, and it is quite the moment to be able to get to this place after 5 long years of preparation.
Okay, so our coalition's common purpose, so we started meeting, we'll go through the history, but our headline here is the common purpose has been to meet the needs of the people in the Lincoln Park community and connect, this has been our mantra again, to connect the many services in this community with the people who could use those services and the best way to facilitate connection over time. So our end ask here is a proposal to formalize this existing ad hoc all-volunteer group and to integrate it into the official workings of the city so that it serves as a resource for you. So just very briefly, again, you have the book in your hand. So this is just the history of the Lincoln Park Social Development Coalition. We began meeting in the fall of 2019, and then here we are in the spring of 2024. We had formal meetings up through the middle of last year. So our volunteers met monthly to address that question: how can Lincoln Parkers with unmet needs be better connected to the many organizations in the city that exist, that are here, just hoping to serve those needs? So I will let Kara start with the very beginning.
So the very beginning actually starts with Matt Koppler, the former city manager. He came to me in about 2018 and said, there are all these needs in the city, and there are all these organizations that are at work. Is there something we can do? And so we sat down and we began to talk, and we began to talk to different members of council at that time of what can we do. And my particular church, we are all about, we don't always feel the need to start something new. We want to look and see who we can partner with in the community that's doing something amazing and build it up. So that thought, even of the church, is then how do we do that on a larger scale beyond ourselves? And so the thought became, well, what does it mean to have the city fostering those connections?
You may have one more.
Oh, do I have
Yeah,
one more?
I think you do. There you go.
All right, so, it skipped. All right, so there we found we needed to have a community forum. And we came together in January of 2020, not knowing that there was going to be a pandemic. And what we found in that community forum was these key areas of education, housing, employment, safety, and belonging. But when we look at the idea of belonging, that there was this sense at the community forum of there were these connections that were missing, and that people were sitting in the community forum going, I had no idea that service was available in Lincoln Park. I have people who are using my service that need that service. And so how do we begin to bring people together? Because as we feel like we belong, there's new possibilities. And so this is where we began to meet past the community forum of going, all right, well, how do we begin to facilitate those connections?
You got another one.
I got another one, okay. So I know, the resources in the community, a need for that connection, and the service providers, this was kind of interesting. They think youth involvement, collaboration, and volunteers. And it's interesting because every organization verbalized that, and even like the churches, right? We're like, yeah, we could use more youth involvement, more collaboration, and more volunteers. But how do we even begin to do that? And so it came about, people don't develop economically unless they develop socially. And I sit on the Economic Development Corporation for the City of Lincoln Park. And so I see that side of it all the time. And maybe you guys know this, right? The whole thing about we want a Trader Joe's in Lincoln Park, and Trader Joe's says, you guys don't look good enough. We don't think you look good enough on paper to come here. So what does it mean to begin to socially build ourselves so that everybody wants to come here? There's so much potential in Lincoln Park if we come together. All right, now.
And so we gathered at the community forum, the three of us, and then started working even further with this collaboration. I had asked that question on my own. What are the needs and how can we address that? And I was told by a dear friend, Becky Guzman over there, that what I really needed was an intern from the Master Social Work Department of Wayne State University. And so we had our first of 3 interns from Wayne State with us, and they were brilliant in taking a good look at the city and giving us an idea of what resources are here. Kara grabbed them at the community forum, and we actually wrote up a guide so that we've got a booklet enumerating all of those resources. And we have that right now. It's on the city website. And as you take a look at the Lincoln Park map, you can see where those assets are located. And what is interesting is where they aren't located. You know? So we then went a little deeper with our next intern, asking the question, how can we find out from the residents what their needs are? And we actually had surveys. We went out in a number of places and had surveys in Spanish and English. We had them at the church during some of our COVID vaccinations. We had 5 COVID vaccination sessions at St. Michael's. We canvassed people at the concerts in the park, at Cinco de Mayo, at Lincoln Park Days. We had a volunteer stationed at the library asking those questions. And on the other side, we had surveys of the agencies that are listed in the resource guide so that we could find out what their needs are and what they had to offer. So what we were hoping then is, again, naming these folks and pulling them together. During the pandemic, we dismantled the church food pantry and actually put a blessing box, mounted to the side of the church to feed people who are food insecure in the city. And what interesting thing we have discovered is that over the last month, 285 people came to use the blessing box. But even more exciting was 55 people in that month actually left food at the blessing box. So our community is already reaching out to help, because we certainly wouldn't be able to do that by ourselves. And we applied for a CDBG grant, and were awarded that, and have applied for it again this coming year. So this cooperation with the city has already been organic, and it's on its way. So, are public decisions good from a social standpoint as well as economic? We say yes.
And then my perspective is a little different because I'm not from the community, right? I arrived here not even really as an employee of the city, but as a planning consultant. It was my role here. And so what that gives me is a perspective of Lincoln Park among other communities. I have stuck with this as a volunteer, but also as staff, and I think that is really important, that I have been paid for the grant to allow this. The reason that we're able to produce what we are is that we secured a grant, and just having that staff support, I think, is a tremendously important part of this. But so I arrived as the city planner at the end of 2015. How I became connected with this group was that community forum that Kara was already working on needed a facilitator, and I had just done some master plan meetings, and so Matt, I think, was like, okay, call her. So I was really impressed. So I just sort of arrived to do this facilitation, and I was really impressed with the fact that there was this group of folks that included council members, that included church members, but that also included members of direct need-serving nonprofits that were just meeting in the basement of Kara's church to figure out how can we become more cohesive and just offer better services. You don't have that in all communities, and it was quite a resource. So that's why I've tagged along to see kind of where it would go. So my perspective, again, is really from the municipal government standpoint. So some things that I know from my time for the master plan, that that there has been a recent at that time, increase in poverty. This is the kind of thing that sort of shows up in social statistics, and then we don't know what to do with it as a government. It's like, well, we're not exactly in charge of that. We're not exactly in charge of alleviating the suffering. How can we help? And yet, you're charged with it. People who are suffering ask you for help. And so there always seemed to be kind of a disconnect there. And I just want to back Kara up. So I was the business and owner-facing city representative for all new development. If you wanted to open a business in Lincoln Park, you were going to have to, at some point probably touch my desk, because that's what the city planner does. And the number of times that, we would ask for improvements, for things that our ordinance requires, for things that really are investing in our community and in folks-owned businesses, and be told, well, the demographics here don't support that. I never liked that. I never liked that, and I don't think that we should stand for it, but I think that a part of not standing for it says, well, we're concerned about that, and we have that in hand. So, two things that I brought to this conversation were quality of life indicators. We're very familiar with economic indicators. What is the taxable value? What are the returns that we have? What is our municipal budget? What are our entitlements? What is the CBG? Those are all financial indicators. What are our social indicators, and do we feel the same responsibility for them? I think that most communities don't. It is not typical at all for a community to be like, I'm going to take the poverty rate here seriously, in part because we don't have good tools for it, right? So that's what we're hoping to address here. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that this really is unique. So again, with the staff support, we had one intern who was able to just do what students do best in that deep dive into looking around and researching. Where has this been done? Can we show this story? There was nowhere in America that we found that had a good model. There were two examples from Canadian cities that showed a really interesting way forward that seemed like it was sort of not out there. It was well positioned within what communities do and illuminated the way. So, from my perspective, connecting government to its social sector is just as important as connecting to its economic sector, right? You were not elected just to serve the economic interests of the city as health, safety, and welfare. And so we think that this is a way to get better tools into your hands to serve your communities that most communities just don't have available. So our ask, again, our proposal is to create a formal advisory body to the mayor and council that's made up of social service agency representatives and staff through a city department, preferably one that has responsibility for community planning. We envision this as being just exactly analogous to an economic development commission, which is typical in many communities. The idea is that you have representatives from an important sector. They come together, they talk about their own, just as the businesses in the EDC do, they talk about their own priorities, interests, and needs in the way that moves the community forward. We staff and support that because we understand that we all move forward. So that is the idea of the proposal here. Is that all we have? Oh, how will it benefit you? We think that it will work towards simplifying residents' access to services. Sometimes the worst part about needing help is trying to find it. Like the runaround before that is just, it's hard when you need help. Better use of existing services by sharing knowledge across providers. We already have these things in the community. We would just love them to reach where they want to go. I'm sure every person who's offering a service would just love for it to get better where it wants to go. Support providers with networking and collaboration opportunities. This is hard work. Being like a need-facing organization, that is hard work, and we think we could better support them in the public sector. Keeping resident service providers and government in the same loop. And we think that city leadership can better serve your constituents by knowing what services are available and how they are connected. So we would just really want to thank you for your time. We are so excited to have an audience with you. We've been working so hard for this, and we're just so delighted. We'd love to answer your questions, unless you have anything you'd like to add. Okay.
One thing I noticed, it mentioned in here that you would like a budget. What kind of budget are you talking about?
Yeah, well, do you want to talk about capacity first? No? Okay, so, I will start with that.
Yeah.
So, we're just really talking about staff support and not even necessarily a budget. What we most envision, so in the backup, for you who did not get the book that comes with this presentation, in the back of it, there's a list of, you could have a year's worth of meetings and here are some agendas. Really, all we're asking for is like, who would staff that meeting? Who would come and take the notes and send out the agendas? And so it would be nobody's full-time job, I imagine, but that it would live somewhere with a person who has responsibilities for keeping it moving forward. So when Joan was here, for example, so she worked in CDBG, she had a personal interest in it. I'm not sure that's the place that it would land, but that is an example of a way that capacity was taken up. But Paula also, so we have been doing much of this work through interns. Like I have been paid through the grant, and then we have one of our intrepid interns here who did a full-time, we've had 3 full-time intern stints. A lot of, as long as you had somebody who was long-term and long-term and engaged on staff, you could, I believe, get a good deal of capacity support in a way that Paula is going to tell you about.
I already got an email this morning from Wayne State University saying that they had a student who was interested in the work that we are doing. Would we be interested in having another intern here? And of course, we would love to have an intern. They would start in August and continue through the end of April. And we have had some marvelous interns from Wayne State. One of my parishioners teaches at U of M in the social work department, and she said, why don't you have someone from U of M here as an intern? I said, well, So we filled out all the paperwork, and we are an accepted agency in case we would get an intern from U of M as well. We applied, when Leah was talking about this grant, you probably saw on the inside cover, we applied for a grant from the Community Foundation of Southeast Michigan, and it was a small grant, but it was enough to cover some paperwork and some extenuating staff that we needed to keep this project going. I wouldn't be surprised if we could apply for another grant. But I don't think we need a lot of money. What I'm saying is, we've been volunteers for 5 years. what's to stop us from continuing the work that we've started? It is near and dear to our hearts.
Okay, and I've already had one person here tonight ask me, why don't you just do a 501? Why do you want to link with the city?
So, I can answer that. So, the reasoning behind doing it with a city instead of a 501c3, just as with doing it with a church, is that we will cease to exist at some point. And if the city ceases to exist, we're all screwed. So, the thought is, right, why not house it? Yes, I pastor and I sometimes swear a little. So, the thought is, the city is the stable thing. Pastors will come and go, 501c3s will come and go in here, in the city of Lincoln Park, and so why not have it stable? The other thing about seeing it as a budget, also thinking that along the lines of the EDC budget, right? You guys approved the EDC budget, but the EDC has to figure out revenue. Right? You guys don't give, the city of Lincoln Park does not give money to the EDC. Right, we've got billboards. And so one of the problems we ran into as Paula was writing grants was the fact that they did not want to give a grant to the church because this is about, community stuff. And so we had to make a case of, well, actually, technically, this is the community stuff. So we think that the actually being housed within the city will open up more possibilities for grant opportunities.
Very logical. Any of the council have questions?
Through the chair, Your Honor, I would just like
Council
to
President?
commend Cara and Paula. I mean, you guys are truly leaders of Lincoln Park just because of the church that you serve and the people that you serve. So I appreciate you coming to us, and I'd like to read more on this, and anything that we can do as a council to help, let us know. And I know you're preaching right now, but I got to get a better understanding. So thank you for all you do for the people of Lincoln Park and other communities.
Well,
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
For the,
Excuse me, Maureen was next.
so if we can work all this out in that, are you still looking at the thought of having a brick and mortar where people can come in? Are you going to run this out of the church? Did you want to run it out of a city building? What were your plans to move forward with this?
So part of this is virtual, right? So the virtual resources of getting resource, but it is seen, how do we house it within the city? Not necessarily that we need office space or something like that, but how do we become collaborators in making sure we're engaging with you all, we're continuing in that capacity of communication. So I don't necessarily see it as a total brick and mortar, but our house is here with you all. Does that make sense?
Well, because it would be really a beautiful thing if you had a place where all these resources could be put and, someone, where it would be sat together and people could come in and see what resources are available. But that's something that I think would have to be built on, and I know you've been doing it for 5 years.
But there's still way more to go.
There is, right, but I see what the plan is. I've been, when you started, and, I just think it's a wonderful idea. It's just finding all these pieces and putting this puzzle together to make it work, but I commend you for all this work. It's just a wonderful thing. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Jason, you're next.
I guess I had a virtual question. When it comes to the resource guide that's already on the website, is that a document that's able to be updated as providers come and go? And has it been, are there people that update it?
There haven't been in the last year, but if you'll take a look at your last pages of the proposal, you'll see that we have an agenda for the entire year to come.
Yes.
And one of the major things that we need to do is to suss out that resource guide and make sure that not only is it up to snuff, but that maybe we can start getting folks together again. We told them we would after the first community forum, and then the pandemic hit, and then we didn't. And there is strength in numbers when you start networking, and we really need to continue to do that. So I am very pleased that we have an agenda going forward that takes all of those things in account. So, yes,
Okay.
it will happen.
Because I know there's always a back and forth between having it online
Right.
and printing hard copies, that once there's a hard copy, that obviously can't be updated easily. But
it'll
then
go out of
again,
date,
that's
right.
an easy way for
Right.
people to access it, so it's a give and take.
Right. And one of our interns was here in City Hall and spent some time with Kathleen Pope and said, what do the people need? And she said, sit here with me for a day and you'll hear what they need.
Do we have any other questions from the council? Okay, yes,
Just a quick comment.
sure.
Because the guide was brought up, so just, for in between, the guide is there, it's on our website, and there are resources there. So if you know of anyone that needs anything, check out the resource guide. Thank you. And thank you, ladies, very much.
Okay, what I'm hearing from my council is, again, thank you for all that you have done and what you're continuing to do. We're going to have to put our heads together and number one, see if this is feasible, and number two, how will we take the next step? So let me talk to the council, let me talk to some of the department heads and see what the next step can be, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I really want to thank my bishop, my dean, my congregation, and all the others who are supporting us in this effort tonight. Thank you for receiving us so generously.
You know, there was one thing I did not do that I always do at a public meeting. Was there anybody in the public who would like to ask a question? Anybody?
When are you going to take a vote on it?
We're good. It's going to have to take a couple of weeks, at least until we can talk to each other, and I can't give you an exact date at this point. So to be fair, because this is something new, something different, something that does not happen, so, and we are kind of in flux in both the departments I think that you would fit in, so that's going to have to be something we talk about. And there was a young lady there that would like to talk. You'd have to come to the microphone.
How many people on a weekly basis come to this building looking for services? Is there a statistic?
I don't know I don't think we can give you a statistic, but I will tell you, you're absolutely right. I get calls on a daily basis. I'm here every day, and every day I get a call from somebody who has some kind of issue that, could be helped, and that I have referred to both these young ladies, and I have referred to some of the other places that you speak of. So.
Thank you.
And with that, I will move for adjournment. At 6:55. Guys, you have 5 minutes to take a break.
Very much off from the computer clock.